it kind of feels like the Jedi are already lost down this dark path. Saul, Indara, Kelnacca, and Torbin, I think they have already lied. They have already covered it up. I'm not going to be behind the Jedi on this one.
Krypton to Alderaan. Krypton to Alderaan. Krypton to Alderaan. Krypton to Alderaan.
Welcome, everyone, to Krypton to Alderaan. I'm Joey, your Star Wars lover, and with me is Royish Goodlooks, your Star Wars song guy, although we'll probably talk some format stuff as well.
I contain a multitude of guys. Hello, Joey. Hello, podcast.
Hello, and we're the podcast that analyzes nerdy pop culture, but it's mostly Star Wars, and this episode, we are taking our first steps into a larger world with the Acolyte episodes 1 and 2, Lost/Found and Revenge/Justice. This is what makes it hard for content creators. Like, do I say Lost, Found, Revenge, Justice? I feel like that doesn't make any sense, so I have to say the slash. Anyway, but first, we are so close to 1,000 subscribers. Thank you, everyone, for your support thus far. Please, if you can like, share, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Remember to get down in the comments. We've had a great active comment section. We want it to continue throughout the Acolyte. We love having the conversations there. We love the thoughtful, respectful conversations that are going on to not only other people, but also the art. We love and pride ourselves on remaining open and being open to everything new in Star Wars, in other things, and we really hope to get that across in our videos and in our comment section. So thank you, everyone, for remembering that as we go forward. And yeah, help us get to 1,000 subscribers. It's the next major milestone for us. We are so excited to get there, and we really appreciate everyone. And that's enough of that. Let's punch it. Last episode in our road to the Acolyte, I had said that I was so far all in, which is like a very silly thing to say before the content actually drops, but I'm huge High Republic fan. I love the books. I love the comic books. I've been in it for years. It has been not only a very successful property, but has very much hooked me in. There are so many books and comic books that have come out over the last 5 years or so, and I have consumed them ravenously. So that has definitely played a role in what I thought I would, how I thought I would enjoy this show and the level to which I thought I would go into it with excitement and expectation. So you, Royce, were a little bit maybe more iffy on the fence, which is probably a more healthy way to go into a thing that we really don't know all that much about. But after seeing the first 2 episodes, how you feeling?
Hey, it's okay to judge the book by the cover, the TV show by the trailer. That's what it's there for. But yeah, we got our 2-episode premiere. Dude, super duper fast paced. They jumped right in. I mean, our classic, the scenes from the trailer are the first 5 minutes of the show type of thing. But then we jump right into some massive dialogue. You know, we're not just truncating all our conversations Mandalorian style. We're actually talking with these characters and seeing how they feel about the universe that they're in. We're getting our longer, lingering scenes on occasion, much like in Ahsoka. But we're also getting a ton of great action as well. Like I said, the pacing is boom, 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 boom. I mean, even the title card of The Acolyte, there's no time for even a theme song over top of that. So the show is moving really quickly, which I think is a welcomed way to format the show. And we get a ton of ships, we get a ton of planets, we get Neimoidians, a cute little droid. What's not to love there? It's a little bit different than some of the other Star Wars. I love that Disney Plus literally labels this as mystery. You know, they are billing it as it's a different genre. It's not just sci-fi, or I don't know if Mandalorian says sci-fi Western or what have you, but it's a little bit different than most Star Wars, but there's a lot there that we're familiar with still. Yeah, I'm enjoying the ride so far, and there's a lot I still am excited to see. Much like we said last week, you know, there's still some stuff from the trailer that maybe we haven't seen. The scene with all the Jedis, I really hope that that's not the last scene of the show is all the Jedis. That's already been kind of spoiled. Right. But yeah, I'm excited for next week. I love the 2-episode premiere. What do you think?
I am also feeling good about it. There are some things that are a little bit jarring to me that I didn't expect to have happen so quickly, and I didn't expect for the Jedi to necessarily be in the philosophical place that they are in quite yet. But other than that, I love the look of the show. We get to see a ton of aliens, which I really like. We haven't really gotten in live action Star Wars all that much recently. So that's very cool to see. We get like a cantina thing going on.
The cantina was rich, very much like that A New Hope vibe. Lots of stuff that you could pause the frame and check out.
100%. And so many cool lightsabers already. Like you can also like pause and look at the hilts of the lightsabers and just be like, cool. Yord has a yellow one, which I really love. He uses it to like light up the cave, which is like not something that we see very often, but just so cool. I love the High Republic vibe. I love like the High Republic robes, the costuming, and I love the pacing. I really do. It's happening very quickly, but I do love those thoughtful moments. There's so many that I can like go to in my mind where they just kind of take a pause. When Yord confronts Osha on the Trade Federation ship, she like goes to reach for Pip and he goes to reach for his lightsaber, and they just kind of stand there for a second, like, what's going on? And so there's moments like that where we can like adjust and breathe and like kind of like hold on for a second, be like, is stuff going to go down right now? And I love the mystery. Like, I love that this is, like you said, like this is being set up as a mystery. And there's so many levels. This is like the Onion thing again. There's like so many layers of mystery here. We're only 2 episodes in, so we don't know much. And we're certainly going to get like a flashback episode or two. But there's so much mystery surrounding almost every character we meet in the show. And that's very, very palpable. So there's this broad, overarching mystery that we get introduced to in the text on screen, not necessarily a crawl.
But in the dark corners of the galaxy, a powerful few learn to use the Force in secret.
Right. So big mystery there. And then we get to see a little bit of like what that means or the fallout from that in the actual show. So overarching mystery there, but then every single character, Saul, all of the Jedi that were on Brandok, there is some secrecy and a mystery going on there. Osha, Mae, Kamir, like everyone, there is mystery around. And so I really love that. It really keeps my like attention. It keeps tensions high. It always has me like looking for stuff in scenes and ready for something to get explained, which is just so engaging. If you can't tell by how quickly I'm talking, I'm very excited about it so far. 2 episodes in, really enjoying it.
Yeah, I love how every character, you're like, they give you some information. And there is kind of a lot of tell not showing yet. I almost kind of do wish that we started in the flashback already and then flash forward sort of thing, that we got context.
Sure.
But that's part of the mystery, right? Why did they like cover something up when they found these children originally, or when they tried to save them originally? And I'm really fascinated with Torbin. The meditation scene with him was wicked cool, that he's like in a force field. He hasn't spoken in 10 years, but then, you know, he's got something deep within that he's been holding on to that's eating him alive, and chooses to take his own life rather than continuing to like meditate on it and like cut himself off from the world, you know, like Luke goes to Octo to cut himself off from the Force sort of thing. Kind of maybe a little bit of a similarity there of like, I failed in the past, or we don't know what happened, but something mysterious happened and we want to know. I really like Star Wars Explained non-spoiler review of the first 2 episodes. He said, it's not a whodunit, it's a why done it. And I think that's
I love that.
Such a fun framing of it. It's like, yeah, who cares? Like, obviously, it's a Sith with a mask with a voice changer device in their Padawan that they're kind of using to do their bidding. But why? You know, we kind of already sort of know the who in a way.
Yeah. Some of the who is answered by like Mae, which is another mystery that I really love. Like all of the promotional material, like we thought Mae was going to be the main character. And it turns out she's not. She's like the main character. It turns out she's not. She's like the quote unquote bad guy. I think it's going to be much more complicated than that. But I also love that there was like mystery wrapped up in like the way they promoted this and the way like IMDb read and stuff like that, which is just a cool thing for them to have like kept under wraps. And there has been a fair amount of tell and not show, especially I feel like from Yord. There were a couple of times where I really noticed it and I was like, I don't necessarily vibe with the way that was done or said. But then it just turned out to be so like in character for him. This is something I kind of complained about for the Mandalorian season 3, characters explaining to the audience what was going on right before our very eyes. But with Yord, it feels like that is something that he would actually do. Like, to me, that's the way I'm reading that character. Like,
thanks, Captain Obvious.
Yeah, exactly. He's so like maybe out of touch with the rest of the galaxy. Like, he gives me the vibe that he was like born and raised in the Jedi Temple, never left Coruscant, never like met anybody or interacted with many other people out in the galaxy. And so he's acting a certain way that he and talking a certain way that he thinks he's supposed to as a Jedi, which I think is bad, right? It eventually leads to the downfall of the Jedi. And I think it makes him come off as a little bit like, I know, and I have to kind of like explain it to you because I don't think you know. It felt like the exposition coming from him was very in character.
Yeah, it's working to serve the story. So, one thing we're talking about is like, it's a new show. What's the format going to be like? What's the dialogue going to be like? Is it going to be action heavy? This is doing a lot of those things. And so far, I think it's balancing it really well. I know it's only 2 episodes, but here's the fun statistic parts. Episode 1, a little over 42 minutes. Episode 2, a little over 38. So pretty consistent so far. If you look at my graphs from our previous episode 2 in these series normally kind of like drops dramatically. I think Ahsoka goes from like 57 to like 44 minutes, episode 1 to 2. So we're kind of still on an even keel for these first 2 episodes, but it is below the average. It's only 40 minutes on average between these 2, which is 46 minutes total for all Star Wars series. So it's a little bit shorter, but the way that they've got the pacing moving, like it's working for the kind of type of story that they want to tell. Here's a little bit of mystery. Okay, we're going to jump to the bad guys and see what they're up to. Oh, and then the good guys meet up with the bad guys. Okay, now the episode's over. Sometimes I don't like the short endings, which we've complained about kind of maybe last week and in other episodes or other series. Oh, I need more. And I do want more, but they're doing a really good job of balancing it so far. I will come back with more stats, but that's what we have so far. Oh, wait, I got one more.
Yeah.
The same exact episode 1 and 2 runtimes as Andor episode 1 and 2.
Interesting.
So if that's any correlation.
I would have assumed that Andor was longer. Tune back in next week for more how long was this episode.
But I think, again, there's a consistency there that's been playing well so far. They've set it up. Now we know what to expect. We had 2 episodes, which I think they did play one after another in succession very well. If they keep that up, maybe we do have a solid Andor-level series on our hands.
Fingers crossed. I am not only really enjoying it so far, again, based on what I like about Star Wars, but am really, really hopeful that it wows us, right? That we can continue to go forward and maybe we can look back at this and be like, the Acolyte is Andor-level Star Wars, whereas like you and I really loved Andor, and that's the bottom line. And so if we can look back and say like, man, the Acolyte was so good, it's like Andor-level good, but with Jedi. That's what I want to be able to do.
Andor was building up the rebellion, right? Andor's not even in Mon Mothma's rebellion, right? But we're kind of like starting to converge there. We've got like Saw Gerrera, we've got Luthen, right? So a lot of factions culminating there to build up the rebellion that we love seeing in the original trilogy era. But yes, for the Acolyte, building up to that prequel Jedi era, which may be, do we love those Jedi? Do we not? That's a different story. But filling in on that at that same sort of epic level. Yeah, I'm getting really excited thinking about that. So let's talk about Jedi and maybe Sith, because that's really what the show is, right?
Yeah. Obviously, that's the most exciting thing for me, I think, is like diving into this Jedi and Sith stuff. And last week we talked about how this might not be a love letter to Jedi. In fact, Leslie Headland has said like, these might not be like the Jedi we're looking for, more or less. They will be the antagonists to the bad guys, which I will say, based on all of that and based on our conversation last week, I was expecting it to build towards that a little bit. And from what I saw of these first 2 episodes, it kind of feels like the Jedi are already lost. Where are you with that? Because it feels to me, with some of the stuff that's said and some of the stuff that's done, and Vernestra Rwoh in particular, which is very heartbreaking for me, because she is like the one High Republic character that's spanning this timeline from the books to 100 years later in this show. Like she's 100 and something years old at this point. So I know that character well, and it's really sad for me to watch this show and think, oh, she is kind of fallen here. The Jedi have already started to retreat into Coruscant and lead to what I thought was going to take the whole series for them to get to.
I think it's fair. We have good and evil in the show. And then within the Jedi, we can still have this like creative do-good Jedi and this like dogmatic bureaucratic Jedi as kind of 2 sides of a coin. which I think we even see with like Yord and Jeki, Soul in there as well. I really love that like he's teaching the Padawans and he's like, oh, the Force is really powerful. It's to be respected, whether it's fire or the ocean. And he's talking about that grander world of the Force. But then when he talks with Vernestra and she's like, oh, we're going to have to like see how the council feels about this. And like, oh man, I could put myself in Soul's shoes being like, oh, I want to check out for this conversation. I don't want to be on this email chain right now. I just want to go back to teaching the young kids how to like respect the Force, which by the way, the kids are meditating and she just walks into the meditation. Like, come on, we're having a class here, Vernestra.
Yeah.
Come on. Yeah, I was definitely like feeling Soul in that. But then it's really interesting because you can tell that he is conflicted, but at the same time, he's like, no, of course, I'm okay with your decision to, arrest my former Padawan if that's what the council thinks. So he's still playing ball. But then I love he goes out into the field and Jeki's like, permission to speak? You can just speak. Speak freely. Get our Boba Fett reference in. I love that he's like not super strict with the rules, and again, that plays well off of Yord, who is like the Boy Scout of the bunch. And he's teaching that to Jeki. And Soul's like, no, you don't have to worry about following the rules to a T. I think we have to have that dynamic that there are some of the Jedi that you're like, these guys. And then you get the Soul who are more like Qui-Gon Jinn, like, oh, the Queen doesn't have to know about this. That dynamic, I think, just works better for the story rather than if all of the Jedi were like, okay, they're all perfect. They're all angels. Maybe that just wouldn't be juicy.
Yeah. So in a lot of the High Republic books, there are a lot of Jedi who, like, when they're discussing the Jedi Council, they discuss the Jedi Council in a very, like, they're just stuffy. All they do is sit in their circle at the temple on Coruscant. They don't know what it's like out here, because at that point, the Jedi are, like, out in the far reaches of the galaxy, interacting with other people and other beings and trying to bring peace and trying to set up like outposts all across the galaxy. So when the council is discussed in a lot of times, it's that they are snooty, stuffy, and don't get out much. And that's why they are the way they are, which is the vibe that Vernestra is giving me in this, which is why it hits so hard for me, because I've gotten to know her over the past like 5 years as she was as a young Jedi Knight. At that point, she's the youngest person to ever pass the Jedi trials. So she's the youngest Jedi Knight. And she takes on a Padawan and she's like going through all of these tests and she's also learning. But to see her end up here where she says to Soul, do you know what will happen if it gets out that one of our former Padawans is killing our own? And Soul says, our political enemies will use that against us. That was the first real blow to me of thinking, oh, are they already lost? And then, like we talked about last week, there may be being like a cover up with the Sith. Like, why does Maul say, at last we will reveal ourselves? And the Jedi Council is like, it's impossible. The Sith haven't existed in 1,000 years. Why does that get said if we see a Sith in the show? And we were thinking like maybe the cover up. I think they've already covered some stuff up. And this was Vernestra saying, we're going to have to get to this before anyone else does and try to cover it up. She says, discretion is important. Our justice swift, an example made. When talking about like going and bringing in this former Padawan, it just feels like they are already like down this dark path, which maybe coincides with like the reintroduction of evil Force users in the galaxy, right? It's kind of like infecting maybe the good Force users of the galaxy. I think there's also something here with something that was brought up, I think in Dooku Jedi Lost, in the book Dooku Jedi Lost, where Dooku says something like, Yoda has lived for too long. Yoda's too desensitized to everything. It's very hard to keep track of like what is right and what is wrong when you live for 900 years. So maybe these Jedi that like span the test of time start to lose touch in that stuff. I don't know if that's what's happening here, but it sure feels icky to me the way Vernestra handled all of this.
Yeah, that's interesting that they can lose sight of things over time because Vernestra is supposed to be older. So do you think that there is a disconnect between what you know of her in the books versus in the show? Or is it like now that we know that there might have been this cover up, does that explain it?
I still have some catching up to do with some books, but as of now, as of like my relationship with Vernestra Rwoh from the books, again, set 100 years before this show, it does feel very different. Like there's definitely a disconnect. Her character has changed over the last 100 years.
I mean, same thing happens to Luke.
Exactly. Same thing happens to all of us. Like, people change. And there's good reason. Like, there are very, like, horrible, traumatic things that happen to the Jedi as they are trying to go out in the galaxy and set up outposts and bring their Jedi-ness out to the rest of the galaxy. And so maybe that's part of her retreat. To see her, like, representing what we see of the prequel era Jedi, where they've all just, like, they've retreated back to Coruscant. They just don't listen to people. Like, impossible. The Sith have been extinct for 1,000 years. This dude just saw one. And you've been sitting here in this room. Later in the second episode of The Acolyte, Vernestra's like, we can't do stuff like this without meaningful discussion, which, yes, meaningful discussion. Very important, obviously. But at that point, all Sol wants to do is go warn Kelnacca that someone's coming for him.
That's an emergency scenario, Vernestra.
Yeah. And so I don't think it's an accident that she is so wrapped up in the quote unquote proper way to do things as seen by like the Jedi Council, that there's not even a conversation about sending another team to get Kelnacca. Maybe we'll see that happen, but there's no discussion about it. She's like, you have to get back to Coruscant now. The situation has changed. It's no longer your Padawan. It's an outsider. So you need to get back here and we need to figure out what to do next. And he's just like, I need to go warn my friend that we're being murdered. And she's like, no, come back here. That's not good.
Yeah, but I love this dynamic. Like, obviously, character-wise, you're like, oh, she kind of stinks. But I think we're supposed to root for Sol. He's obviously more of a lead than Vernestra, at least at this point. And I'm kind of hoping that he just ignore her. Just like Qui-Gon would, or I'm sure there's other characters in the Star Wars universe that do similar, like Ahsoka kind of does her own thing, right? So, these independent thinkers move the ball forward, You're Jack Bowers, the ends justifies the means. There's something more important here than going back to the council. And I love that could get Sol in trouble with them. Like, maybe that's a little bit of trotted ground. Like, Qui-Gon wasn't on the council because he would always go against the rules, and Obi-Wan makes fun of him for that. But I love that he's being an independent thinker. He's still in the order. He's still respected. He's still a smart guy. In fact, he probably deserves more respect than he actually gets. And maybe kind of the same with Sol, to be open to all these we don't have to follow the rules, speak freely sort of thing. And it's okay. It kind of stinks that you have the maybe not preconceived, but the history with Vernestra, because I think we're just supposed to be like, nah, she stinks. She wants to follow all these rules by the book. And
I really love her. I really do. I mean, she's a great character.
But in the show, if that's all you know.
In the show, I mean, I would love to see more of her and see why she is this way or what she believes is right. Why does she believe that this is the right thing to do? I also don't necessarily think that this is an accident. This might be a little bit more of a stretch, but when Sol is teaching those younglings, the High Republic introduced me to the idea that Jedi see the Force and interact with the Force in different ways. So Vernestra sees it as a flowing river into an ocean. Burryaga, the Wookiee Jedi in the High Republic books, he sees it as a giant tree. There's a character named Bell who sees it as a fire, but Sol's example to the class is imagining it as an ocean. So there's also something there that kind of irked me where you're telling these younglings how to perceive it. When 100 years ago, everyone had their own way of seeing it and it was very special to them. Some people saw it as a wind. Avar Kriss, one of the greatest Jedi, saw it as a song, like the melody of a song, and she could interpret the song and say, oh, that note's off. Something wrong is going on over there. And it was amazing to see written in the books. But in this era, he's telling them how to see it, which I really didn't like. And then we have the one little kid who's like, I see fire, which is the way that some people see it, right? And then Sol discusses that the fire can get out of control, but what you need to learn is how to control it. And that will be learning how to control the Force.
Yeah.
But it irked me that he was trying to tell them how to imagine seeing it.
Maybe I'll have to watch it again and see if I pick up on that. I didn't quite read it that way. And then I love later on when he's talking to Jecki and she's like, why do you keep all these hollows of your old Padawan? And he's like, because you have to meditate on the past to learn from it. Even though Jecki's like, you're not supposed to have those attachments. And he's like, no, this is why this is important. I'm not just feeding into this egotistical thing. I'm learning from this experience. This is important for me to remember this and reflect on it. Dude, they've set him up to be such a well-meaning character, versus the dogmatic view of, Vernestra.
But Vernestra, in one of the books, says the same exact thing. I can't remember the exact book or the exact moment, but someone's dealing with grief, or a bunch of them are dealing with grief. I can't remember if it's after the great hyperspace disaster or what. But she specifically says, we can't not feel grief. We have to feel grief. The thing about being a Jedi is learning to feel it and then let it go, deal with it, address it, do whatever you have to do to deal with your grief or your feelings. And then having dealt with them, you will be able to move on. It's a lot like what Anakin says in Attack of the Clones. Like at that point, the Jedi are like, we're not supposed to love. And Anakin's point is, well, actually, if you think about it, all we should do is love. The disconnect is that Vernestra says almost the same thing as Sol says. It is okay to feel things and look to the past and deal with stuff. The most important thing is dealing with your emotions, and then you will be able to move on. So that's why it feels like she's changed so much to now this character we see here. And they're obviously teaching the younglings the way that Jecki feels.
Yeah, there's a lot of like, wait, what are we supposed to think then? Because she's asking for all this permission to speak. She's got like a playbook that she thinks she has to follow. Yord is following it to a T, maybe teaching that to her. And then Sol is like, throw that out the window. And I guess this does kind of correlate to like our reality of, you know, an adult saying like, you know, do as I say, not as I do sort of thing. And you're like, well, what the heck then? Stupid things. You're like, why is this a rule? And like you're saying the actually reflection is a really interesting part of this discussion. And that's just the thing is like the Jedi are not perfect.
No.
And I think that's what I love about that scene with Sol and Jecki where he's talking about the hologram of like, you have to figure out how this applies to your current situation. The black and white nature of it doesn't work. That's what is so brilliant about Star Wars and the Jedi and the Sith is trying to figure out like, what is right? What are these Jedi supposed to be like? What rules are they supposed to follow? And then you have the Sith who are learning to use the Force in secret, you know, tapping into the same powers. And we have to explore more of this. I love those dialogue moments are probably the best. We have to have action, but to talk about their philosophies, you have to do that through words. That's not through the feelings of like Kylo Ren gets angry and he goes and slashes everything in his control room. We've seen that, and you can show emotion that way, but you can't show the philosophies so much. So we do have to talk out some of that stuff.
Yep, I agree. It's very obvious that this is the gap that we're bridging. We're getting from Sol. He's a master. He still feels guilty about some stuff that happened in the past, and he's trying to deal with it. But they are teaching the younglings not to deal with stuff, which is why Jecki says that and why Jecki feels like she has to ask for permission to speak. Like, that's not a good sign. And it all leads to your thoughts dwell on your mother. Like, you just ripped the kid. The whole reason for Anakin's downfall could be that moment. And this is the path to that, which is like what leads to their downfall. This is really what I'm interested in seeing more from this show is this complex divisiveness, not only between the Jedi themselves, between each other, but then with these Sith or acolytes or whatever is going on the edges of the galaxy that we then get to see a little bit from Mae and the characters that interact with Mae. Getting to the point where we see Mae, see a little bit more of Mae's backstory, hear from the stranger, as he's called in the captions, whoever the guy is that has the red lightsaber, and Kamir saying like, maybe some of these people have a point. Again, the line is, their piece is a lie, came in, which I think is very pointed, again, to say their master is a Sith. I'm pretty convinced of that now, but it's always been like, in the movies, good and evil. But now I think we're going to get these complex things and maybe have a little bit more nuance and say, maybe these people have a point when we see what happened to Mae and what put her on this path. What I believe happened is that Sol, Indara, Kelnacca, and Torbin covered up what actually happened to Osha and Mae and their family and blamed the fire on Mae, which I do not think is the truth. I think they have already lied. They have already covered it up, and we're going to see that take place, and maybe we're going to see Osha's reaction to that as well, but we're going to see what put Mae on this path, and I think come out of it being like, yeah, obviously, that's what happened. We might back Mae a little bit throughout this.
Yeah, I don't have much speculation, but I do want to see that flashback to get more clarification on what's going on. Like, that's so far the beauty in this series is the mystery. I would love to see maybe something like Osha come back to the Jedi Order and like Mae leave the Sith. Because like right now, Osha's just kind of this neutral mechanic, right? And like isn't even connected to the Force. Not exactly sure like why she left it, but it would be interesting to see some character that left and is now in that neutral position come back, find new reasons to like believe in the Order and maybe try to be a force for good there. No pun intended. And then maybe Mae realizing like this path to the dark side, not to be redeemed to like the light, but just to walk away from the conflict altogether, walk away from good and evil and just live a happy, normal life. That's my speculation, if you could call that speculation. It would be interesting to see a different dynamic of redemption that we haven't quite seen. We haven't seen people like recommit to the Jedi Order, like Ahsoka doesn't recommit to the Order, a sort of thing, you know? Maybe I'm wrong if there's other comic books or stories about that. And then same thing with the Sith. Like, it's always like, I come back to light, now I'm redeemed. Like, you don't have to be redeemed. You can just walk away.
I think Ahsoka's main reconnection, we've seen in Ahsoka in the World Between Worlds. I think that's the closest thing. I'm feeling like it's headed towards the opposite, I think, for me. I also want to see more of the Sith Master and Apprentice stuff that we haven't seen a lot of in live action, right? I want to see that dynamic between like the Sith and his acolytes or whoever he's trying to set up to be his like number two. But it feels to me like Osha will find out the truth that Saul and the other three Jedi covered up when they found her on Brandok. She'll find out the truth and then turn from the Jedi. And so maybe we will see her fall, which we also haven't really seen besides Anakin. We haven't seen like a lot of Jedi truly fall to the dark side. So it might also be cool to see, but it also really feels like that might be the direction. Like there is a lie, there is a cover up. She believes and she says she has faith in the Jedi. So if she finds out that they did cover up and they've been lying to her, or maybe did something to her memory to make her think that like Mae started the fire, then she will fall. Which I would also be very interested in seeing because it is the opposite of what we have seen a lot.
Yeah, I would be on board for that too. We have to see some kind of flip-flopping. Like I said, like you need that dichotomy. So if one comes the light side, one goes the dark side, I don't really care who in terms of a good story. But yeah, it'd be nice to see something like that. Whatever it is, there is something here that would push a Jedi, someone who's supposed to, you know, like you said earlier, you know, be able to like bring the fire back down. Calm your nerves, center yourself, all these like awesome Jedi philosophies that it pushed a Jedi so far that they were like, I just need to be in my own force field, cut myself off from the world because I can't deal with the pressure. That's a great J.J. Abrams mystery box thing. Why? What would push a Jedi to that length? And then, you know, we have Sol, Indara, and the Wookiee Jedi. I don't know the name of the Wookiee Jedi, but
Kelnacca.
So we have all of them involved with this. Maybe we'll hear from Indara in a flashback, maybe not. Sol is keeping his lips quiet so far. Maybe they'll subtitle the Wookiee, maybe not. Maybe they'll speak basic, who knows?
That is it, though. Like I said before, like mystery surrounding every character. And we see Torbin was the main thing that got me thinking like, oh, I think this is a lie. I think they have already covered this up, right? He took the Barash vow, which is very interesting because I think originally introduced by Charles Saul in one of the Darth Vader comics. And then we learn more about it in the High Republic comics. And so it is something that like the Jedi take because they think they've done something wrong or something truly egregious. They dedicate themselves to this meditative state to really listen to the Force because they believe that they have misinterpreted the Force. And so they go to specifically just commune with the Force. And he has done this and it's been like 10 years. And then he drinks the poison and says that they thought they were doing the right thing. So that was the main thing that led me to believe that they had already lied. They had already covered something up. He was the linchpin of that. And then when I went back and watched it again, the way that Saul talks about it all is very like, ooh, I don't know if he's telling the truth about Mae starting the fire or what exactly went down. So yeah, just more of like the Jedi I'm not going to be behind the Jedi on this one. Like there just doesn't feel like I'm going to get behind them. And the call to maybe get behind the characters like Mae who have been put through stuff by the Jedi, I might be more likely to back her than the Jedi themselves.
Joey, you're scaring me, but I'm still going to root for Saul. I'm hoping he can just be the beaming light here where he's like, no, let's see it my way. And follow me, everybody, and we'll all be safe. The only thing for sure is that there's still the mystery to be revealed. Man, I'm loving it. I'm more excited now after our conversation as per usual. But listeners, let's keep this conversation going. We would love to hear from you. Leave your comments here on YouTube and make sure to subscribe. Help us get to 1,000 subscribers. We should be within like 100. It could be you. You could be the 1,000 subscriber and win our love and affection.
Yes.
So thank you for supporting the show, and make sure to tune in next time for more nerdy pop culture, but mostly the Acolyte for the next 5 to 6 weeks. Thank you for listening to the show today. I've been Royce.
I've been Kelnacca.
And we've been Krypton to Alpha.